Hi, my darlings. I'm Sophie Darling, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're reacting to episode 19 of series 2 of Apothecary Diaries, and I'm so sad because we're so close to the end. We've only got a couple more episodes left, and I'm really not ready to say goodbye to the show. We do have something exciting coming after Apothecary Diaries. We are going to be watching Demon Slayer for the first time, which I cannot wait. It's been highly recommended to me by my friends in real life, and they also were the same ones that recommended Attack on Titan to me. So I'm going to trust their opinion that it may be something that I enjoy. I have seen a few people kind of not happy that I'm watching Demon Slayer, but like, I feel like there may be presumptions being made about me because of me having a doctorate in literature that I only like to watch like specific shows, that like I can only watch something that's like deep and psychological and philosophical so that I can analyze everything extensively. But I also like trash. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not saying that Demon Slayer is trash by any means. Don't get me wrong here. But I sometimes like watching something that is like heavy action. I don't really have to think as much. I can just like lose myself in it. I'm not overly analyzing and theorizing because I'm just there for the ride. I'm here for vibes. I am very excited to watch Demon Slayer. I think there's a lot that I will probably find enjoyment in, and who knows, I may find something in the show to analyze and discuss that maybe other people haven't necessarily highlighted. See, this is the thing. You can't just write something off as being overly simplistic and not enjoyable and having no depth and no meaning when there's always meaning to be found. You can always argue that there's a deeper purpose to the media that we consume that we maybe overlook because we're focusing on the wrong things. So I am excited to explore Demon Slayer and to maybe see if I can offer some deeper perspective into the show that maybe other reactors haven't, or maybe that you didn't initially see on your first watch or even second watch. So who knows? But I think it's going to be a fun ride. I'm looking forward to it. And again, it's been recommended to me by the same people that recommended Attack on Titan, and I absolutely loved Attack on Titan. So I'm here for it. However, that's not what we're here to discuss today. We are here to focus on episode 19. So with episode 18, we saw Jinshi interrogate fake Lolan. He realized it wasn't her because he's been paying attention to all the details. We saw that he's beginning to put two and two together. We also know that Lacan has now found out, because it has leaked, that Mamo is missing. So Lacan is on a warpath. We got officially introduced to his adopted son, who looks more like him than Mao Mao, which is so funny, but it is his nephew, so it makes sense. Genetics are weird. It's like Jinshi looks like his grandfather. It happens. Like, I have the same colored eyes as my great-grandfather. Like, no one in my family bar me and my great-grandfather have the same colored eyes. So, you know, genetics are a strange phenomenon. Like, you can inherit something like generations down the line that your immediate family don't necessarily have, but were in the family tree. What I did love about the previous episode was seeing the comparisons between Mao Mao and Jinshi and their upbringing, that despite the class divide and their differences in life, they both have experienced similar emotional trauma. We have Mao Mao being gossiped about by people in the Vardis house because of the origins of her birth and how it threw the brothel into disrepute, and she was almost blamed for that. And then we have Jinshi, who overheard the other concubines talking about his appearance and how he doesn't look like his mother or his brother, and because the previous emperor only likes young girls, he can't possibly be the emperor's biological child. So he's fully convinced himself that he's illegitimate, that he's not actually born of this bloodline, and therefore is unworthy of being seen as the crown prince, almost as if he's ashamed of himself and feels like he's living this lie, that he has to hide himself away because he doesn't want to bring the royal family into disrepute. He doesn't want his brother's reputation to be potentially at risk because of him. But what I found really interesting as well is that we learned that Mao Mao, because obviously she was being raised by the three princesses, they had to work. and that she would cry and cry and cry, but she would never have anyone come to attend to her needs. So she learned to kind of close herself off to emotions because she knew that no matter how much distress she was in, no matter how emotional she was, no one would come to her, no one would comfort her or give her the support that she needed. She had to learn to be self sufficient, but that means that she's also not really understanding how human emotions work or how feelings work because she's been so closed off to it. She has this emotional trauma that impacts her now as an adult in that she doesn't quite understand how to relate to people because she never had that emotional support that children need to grow up well-rounded and understanding of other people's feelings and to be empathetic. This isn't to say that Mau isn't empathetic because she is, but I can understand where she's coming from in terms of if no one comes to help you when you are in need, you begin to learn that what you want doesn't matter. What you are desiring is always going to be overlooked for something else. And she begins to see herself as not deserving or not worthy of that love and attention that other children receive because she never gets it. She doesn't get that valuable support that is fundamental to children growing up emotionally healthy. And we also see something similar with Jinshi. Again, emphasizing that despite their class differences, they are very similar to each other. We know that Jinshi grew up with his favorite toys being taken away from him. The adults in his life acknowledge that it's not necessarily something they wanted to do because they understand that it's not nice to do that to him. But they had to teach him this valuable lesson that he can't show his favorites because they can be used against him. They can be weaponized. And if he's going to be an emperor one day, he has to be for the people. He can't have favorites. He can't be seen as having favorites because he has to be seen as serving everyone equally and justly. But also, it is for his protection as an adult that nobody will use what he cares about against him. And it almost emotionally stunts him in the sense that he didn't initially realize his feelings for Mao. He saw her as a pawn to be used, but then began to really fall for her. But he finds it difficult to attach himself because he doesn't call Mau by her name. And that was highlighted in series 2. He never calls her Mau. He doesn't even call her by a nickname. And that's because he's so scared of putting a label to her that she could be stolen from him, that she could be taken from him. So he doesn't want to show that he's emotionally attached to her through giving her a name, through recognizing her name, because he doesn't want to lose her, because that stems from the trauma of him being a child and having his favorite toys taken away from him to the extent that no matter how much he cried, they were never returned to him. Mau and Jinshi are so very alike. It's crazy, especially the more we see and we can make those connections between them as children and just the fact that the whole reason that Jinshi's here in this real palace is because he believes himself unworthy. He doesn't think he's actually royal. And he doesn't want to bring shame on his mum or his brother, even though that's not his mum, it's his grandma. But regardless, he just doesn't want to bring shame upon his family. He doesn't want people to question his reputation any further. He doesn't want to be a source of gossip, so he hides himself away. He locks himself behind this facade of Jinshi and allows the rumors to spread about the younger crown prince being weak and sickly, and therefore he can't be seen in public. And he retreats into the rear palace in the hope that one of the high ranking will have a son, and therefore that son can take his place, and he doesn't have to fulfill this role that everyone seems to anticipate of him. And it's why Shen constantly says to him, you can't live this life forever. At some point, you need to accept who you are and step up. And in that moment of recognition from that older woman from the clinic recognizing that he looked like the previous emperor, it makes Jinshi realize he is actually royal. He is actually from that bloodline. And therefore, we might then see him begin to transition into becoming the crown prince he's destined to be, the one that he's hidden from, the one that he's ran away from, but now he begins to accept that role. We've already begun to see that in the fact that he stopped taking the hormonal suppressant, which could be he's thinking about his future, about the fact that he might one day want to have kids. and this tonic can cause infertility. So if he does become emperor, he could risk no longer being able to have children of his own and secure his dynasty. So he is already thinking about it, as well as his future with Mao Mao. But we're also beginning to see this more authoritative side to Jinshi, this fall of the facade in which he's no longer playing the kind, sweet, elegant, charming young eunuch. He's now demanding, authoritative, ordering, refusing to back down for fear of upsetting people. He's taking no prisoners in his mission to find Mao Mao, and I love it. I think what we might see towards the end of series 2 and perhaps the beginning of series 3 is Jinchi finally accepting his role, that he needs to be this prince and that he can't stay as Jinchi forever. But I think this episode we could end up going back to Mao Mao because we haven't had Lolan and Sure humanized yet, so we kind of need to know more about their background, about their experiences, and we have just had mention of Lolan's mum that was a concubine that was given to Shishu, which means she could also be involved in all of this because we know that she was served by Taihao. Taihao had a baby. Maybe she's resentful that Taihao was the one that had the baby, that the emperor overlooked her for her servant, almost took it as like a personal snub. And then maybe when she's been given to Shishu and she learns that Shishu is of this bloodline too, that he descends from the Mother Royal, she also has had ambitions of grandeur about becoming empress, about sitting in a position of power because she was snubbed by the previous emperor potentially because it was her servant that got pregnant. And I think maybe she does suspect that the baby she had was actually the previous emperor's, and therefore maybe is petty enough that she encourages Shishu to take the throne for himself because of his royal connection and his bloodline, because she also wants the power that comes with it, and to get revenge in a similar way on this dynasty and bloodline that descends from the previous emperor because he preferred her servant over her. Maybe. I don't know. I just think now that she's been mentioned, we're going to see her crop up. And I think this whole story that Lolan had in a previous episode about the woman that devours her husband, I know it's to do with praying mantises. They devour their husband after mating, but I feel like looking back now, it could be in reference to her mother, that perhaps her mother is a domineering figure, and perhaps she sees her mother as somebody that's willing to devour her husband to get ahead, to use him and risk her family in the process of gaining power and position and privilege. I don't know. I feel like it could be reference to like a domineering wife, a controlling wife, someone that is maybe pulling strings. That's not to say that Shishu isn't 100% involved, invested, and is wanting to move against the emperor and is organizing this coup. But I think it could be referencing that her mother is also just as driven by power and is hungry for it, that she could be willing to devour even those closest to her to get what she wants. And that means potentially devouring her husband in the process. But we do know that he is gathering metals and money. And I'm wondering then if the metals could be to do with the guns, if potentially they're creating more fifers because they're such an unusual weapon of war that it might give them the edge in a conflict if his side has fifers and the Emperor's side doesn't. So I think he could be capitalizing on the fact that they know about this unique weapon that's used in the West that no one else here uses. And he's trying to build these resources to get more of it and to build them and to supply his army with them, because there very much is an army being built. That was the biggest hint in the previous episode by Lahan, and it's spelled Lahan. Lahan. Don't know. Either way, his biggest hint is that an army's being built. That was very evident. But without further ado, we're going to jump into episode 19, and I'm very excited.
まるで虫の音みたいだ。
Oh, so it's the festival now.
まな尻を染めるのは赤が定番なのに、緑を塗るなんて変わってるな。なんかタヌキみたい。
だって猫みたいだよ。
That's kind of funny because her father's referred to as a tanuki because it was the fox and the tanuki, and the fox is Lacan and Shishu is the tanuki. And the fact that she then goes to Mao Mao, oh, you look like a cat. You're both playing on these animals that you're referred to as. That's so funny. My biggest thing is I want to quickly look up is like, what is the meaning of green in Chinese culture? That foxes are known in Chinese mythology for being tricky, beautiful, and also shape-shifting into humans. So it just seems particularly telling with a story about dual identities and duplicity that we have them appearing as fox spirits because the fox spirit itself is known with shape-shifting. I wondered then if Jinshi could appear within this village and is attempting to find them behind the mask, trying to locate them when they're hidden behind. But how would Jinshi discover where they are? I feel like it would be a little bit difficult for him to suddenly just show up unless he gets like a massive hint. But I thought that the festival was going to be the culmination of everything coming together. Unless the festival is multiple days, it may not just be a singular day. It could run for multiple days. Some festivals do. But I thought like the big showdown would be during the height of the festival, would be the festival itself. So maybe it is like a multi-day event. And then while this festival is in its early stages, Genshi is finding all this information. And then it's at the end of the festival during the final celebration that Jinchi actually figures it out and confronts them. But I am super excited to see how this all plays out, but it's interesting that we're getting the festival now. I may be completely wrong and it could be a single day festival, but I just want to see what the green color symbolizes in Chinese culture. Sorry, I know this has nothing to do with like the actual story, but there's a negative connotation that just kind of made me giggle because it can be linked to being a cuckold. But we know that that's not in relation to this. But usually green represents nature and growth, health and purity, wealth and prosperity, harmony and balance. So we could see it as the green is to stand out as being one of wealthy, noble birth, but it could also be hinting to maybe there's going to be a healing journey, that she's going to break away from her family and perhaps find a new path of hope and prosperity where she can live the life that she wants, not the life that her parents dictate for her. We shall see. I've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent. I just was curious.
私のかんざし貸してあげる。クモの巣の形のやつ。かわいいんだよ。
Of course it is.
私なら一応これでお願い。
へえ、マオマオいいの持ってるね。
Oh,
ものだけどね。
what if that's how Jinshi finds
これちょうだい
her?
って言ったらくれる？
黙ってればいいんだけど、人士様、妙に表情を読むのが
I was gonna say, if she puts it in her hair, that might be Jinshi's way of
そんな心配
finding
する前
her
に
amongst like a crowd of
都に帰れる
mass.
かどうかもわかんないんだけど。
はい、できた。
ありがとう。
That is
祭
cute.
りは里の外にある社でやってるんだ。さあ、行こう。
She does care for her because she wouldn't go through this effort of making her comfortable and doing her hair if she didn't actually like Mao Mao, you know? I feel like the friendship wasn't fake, it wasn't an act, it was real. She's just in a very difficult position.
別世界みたいだよね。
I also saw the lantern plant
まあ
that
ね
was found on the grave.
隣にいるのは緑のタヌキだけど。
Question. Is that how Jinshi discovers where they are? Because the lantern plant they noted wasn't like native to this area. So the lantern plant has obviously come from this area because everybody here is carrying them, everyone's holding them. So what if the plant is the key to Jinshi discovering where they're located and where they're based? Perhaps it's Lumen that gives him that information. Perhaps he goes to Lumen with it and Lumen's able to be like, oh, it's native to this region. Or maybe Jinshi discovers it for himself. But I think the lantern plant is going to be this big key indicator as to where they are. And that's how Jinshi finds where they're located. Something so simple, something so small is going to have like a deeper, bigger meaning. But I just noticed it then that when they're all walking, the lanterns have the plants wrapped around them. And it was the same plant we saw on the grave of Taihao. So I think when Surei visited the grave, she must have been the one to put the lantern plant down. And she would have gotten it from here, from this region, because this is maybe where she was hiding before she came back in as a eunuch. But potentially, which is just great because it means that Jinshi is taking a leaf out of Mao Mao's book. He's actually learning from her and he's displaying that knowledge, like trusting his gut, going on instinct, sticking his nose into everything. Not that Jinshi wasn't capable of doing that before, but he has learned a lot from Mao Mao. And I think the really crucial thing that we're seeing is just how much he's learned from her. And I think the full circle moment will be his interest in this plant and his pursuit of further knowledge in relation to it, because then that is just basically Mao Mao. He's basically just following all the clues that Mao Mao would have followed if the roles were reversed.
たまに止水と同じように目の周りを緑に塗ってる人がいる。ほとんど男だけど、何か意味があるのか。
There we go.
ほおずきなんて美味しくないよ。
知ってる。
毒があるし、花町では妓女が。
知ってる。
They're poisonous. I know.
汚い。
There was something that I noticed in episode 19 that only made sense after I finished watching because I was also editing episode 13 for YouTube. And it was the context of episode 19 and then editing episode 13 that made me go, holy shit, I missed that. I am going to preface, I haven't watched episode 20. I am literally recording the intro for episode 20 as I say this and include it in episode 19 for you guys on YouTube because it connects to episode 19 and it's an important point. So I want to make sure it's included in the video where it's relevant. So in episode 13, they're talking about Ryokyu and Li Hua being pregnant. And then there's also the rumor that Lolan is also pregnant. In the scene that we have just watched, Patreon, ignore this bit because again, I'm going to be inserting this into episode 19 for YouTube. So it might be a little bit confusing. Of course, I'm keeping it here for you guys. If you didn't read the post, then at least we still have this in the discussion. But you can ignore this little bit where I'm like, in this episode, we see that Lolan is chewing on the inside of the lantern plant. And Mao Mao is about to tell her what the lantern plant can be used for in relation to the pleasure district. And Lolan cuts it off and says, I know. And then she spits it out. We obviously know that the pleasure district is home to courtesans. So what would the courtesans be using lantern plants for? Abortions. Because the lantern plant can induce abortions because it has vomiting and stomach cramps as part of its side effects due to it being poisonous. It can be used to induce an abortion. Why would Lolan be chewing it? If not to ensure that she is not pregnant, to either get rid of a baby that she is carrying or because she fears she could be. A question you might have is, why would she do that? The reason she would do that is because she already has an abusive family. She has a mother that beats her. She has a father that doesn't give a shit about what she wants in life. She has been born into this violent, vicious cycle of them grasping for power and using her as an anchor to get there. Why would she bring a child into this situation? If she was born of these people and they can use her, why would they not do the same thing to any child that she has that is the emperor's baby? She's not going to bring a child into that situation. And I think as well, she doesn't want to be a concubine. She doesn't want to be anything but herself. So why would she have a child? Why would she, A, bring a child into this world where it could be used and abused for her parents' attempt at grasping for power? And secondly, why would she have a child that would further cement her connection to the royal family and to the emperor and never allow her to have a chance of independence and freedom? And the answer is she wouldn't. She would take precautions to ensure that she wasn't stuck in a situation that she couldn't get herself out of. It's a mercy for her and it's a mercy for any child that she could potentially be carrying. And it also makes further sense of the abortive capabilities of the lantern plant is the fact that Surrey actually put the lantern plant on her grandmother's grave. And a reason for that is symbolically, Surrey saying that she wishes that her grandmother would have had access to such a plant so this cycle of trauma could have been broken. That if her grandmother had been able to abort her baby, then Surrey would never have been born and Surrey would never have had to have suffered the life that she suffered. That her grandmother never would have had to have suffered this life either. That her grandmother wouldn't have had to go through the emotional trauma of having her child stolen away from her reputation being slandered, from the emperor denying her baby. Then her mother wouldn't have been raised outside of the palace without her mother being present. And likewise, Surrey wouldn't have been born. And we don't quite know what happened to Surrey's mother or if it even is her mother. But at this point, I think it's been hinted at enough that it definitely is. The Banished Princess is definitely Surrey's mother. But we don't know enough about Surrey's experiences to really determine why she would not want to be born, but based on the fact that SHENMEI is abusive, I think she's also probably abusive to Surrey. Both girls have been coerced by SHENMEI and Shishu for their own ambitions, for their own grasp at power. And they've never been able to live their own lives. And symbolically, it is Surrey's way of saying, I wish I had never been born. But also, she wishes that her grandmother and her mother never had to suffer because of her grandmother having had a baby from the emperor's pedophilic tendencies, because her grandmother was a child when she had her baby, you know? So it's Surrey's way of saying that she wishes that the cycle of trauma had never happened and that if a grandmother had had access to this plant, the cycle could have been broken, that this could have all come to an end with something so simple as this plant. It's her way of paying homage to her grandmother, but also recognition of the suffering that her grandmother has gone through, and likewise the suffering her mother went through, most likely, and the suffering that she has gone through too. You could also read it as being symbolic of her wanting vengeance against the very family that caused her own to suffer because it's a poison. So you could see it as a poison from within the royal family itself due to her descending from that bloodline. So there's different ways you can argue it, but primarily I think the argument is
この地方には昔ある民族が住んでいたの。そこへ西から別の国の民がやってきたの。西からやってきた彼らには知識があった。すると今度は豊かになった畑を奪おうとする者たちが現れたの。それが繰り返されるうちに、彼らは深い森の奥に
hiding it away from those that would steal and use and abuse.
狐は知識をもたらした西の民のことで、この村の先祖でもあるんだよ。色をつけるのは定住してそこの色に染まるってことなんだって。
Sorry, the masks were white at first, right? The colors represents how the newcomers settled and took on the colors of the region. So why are some green and some are red? Are the green insinuating that those who wear the green are directly familially linked to those that came from the west, that they are above those in the red? Because obviously these people came from the west, they assimilated, very similar to the Mother Royal, and we know that Shishu descends from the Mother Royal, almost as if it's all connected. It is all connected, but I'm thinking the green must be that they are direct lineage of those that come from the west, and maybe the red is those that were native to the land before those from the west came and settled and assimilated.
なんか聞き覚えがあるような。
It's all connected because they all descend from the Mother Royal's lineage.
だからか。赤であるはずのまなじりの色を
Because they're colorblind.
死水も。
She's
都へやっ
colorblind.
てきた王母たち。 そして森の奥深くに隠れ里を作った白狐の民。どちらもそう同じくする。西から来た民なんだ。
See, it's all connected. It's crazy. That's why they paint around the eyes in green instead of red, because they can't distinguish it. They can't see it. Shisui too, meaning she is colorblind. Yeah, they all came from the West. I thought it was all connected. That's literally why I highlighted it before we even got to this point, because I was like, it's very telling that they came from the West and Shishu is colorblind. So they're all descended from the Mother Royals, so they're all from the same people. It really should have clicked when Mao Mao said more men are wearing it, that there's colorblindness. That's the moment it should have clicked, but I was still looking at Shishu because obviously Shishu is colorblind, that I didn't peg that Shisui could also be colorblind. I'm so mad at myself for it not clicking the moment I saw the green mask. I thought it was just like her being quirky. I didn't think that she would have inherited it because... Oh, she doesn't want to see frogs. There's a Genshi's frog.
虫食べたことない？
花町の屋台では見かけない。
最悪、バッタが混じってた。
どれも同じに見えるけど。
The fact that she can tell the difference.
こっちは美味しい。
違いがわからん。
I couldn't tell the difference either.
言われてみればあのガキ、結構綺麗な面を描いてたの。よくじっと座ってられるな。
一晩で何人か交代でやるんだけど、みんなやりたがるよ。いい思い出になるしね。そろ
So
そ
she
ろ
did
交代
it
の時間じゃ
before.
ないかな。裏でちょっと待ってようか。
あの人の田んぼ、育ちが悪いところがあんだよな。
ケチだから、そこから取れたやつしかくれないんだよね。
こっちのがいいんじゃない？
え、いいの？
Aww.
やったー。ありがとう。
Mama's so thoughtful.
マオマオ、いいやつだね。
別に私が持っててもいいのに。
Yeah, but you still didn't have to do it.
俺どうだった？いい出来だったよ。
Oh, he's so cute. He just wants her
見てくれ
approval.
てたらいいのに。願い事を書いた面が燃え尽きて天に昇ったら願いが叶うって言われているんだよ。迷信じゃねえよ。あれは絶対叶うんだ。
Oh, bless him.
丁寧に絵を描いて願い事書いたんだ。
何書いたの？
言うわけねえだろ。
あ、そう。
He's like, I won't say, because then it won't come true.
今日もあの役やりたかったんじゃないの？
俺は子供じゃねえから、あんなの他の奴らに譲ってやるよ。
You are a little kid.
そうだってな。
You are a child.
今日の面あった？
わかんねえ。ちゃんと燃え尽きるといいな。
Wonder what his wish was. I wonder if it's related to his mum.
叶わぬ願いはそこに沈み、恵みの糧になる。虫は冬を越せない。ただ、子を残すのみ。
This is such a beautiful episode. I really like them delving into the festival atmosphere. I love that she says insects never survive the winter, they just leave their children behind. So I wonder if that is linked to how she feels about her own parents, that they're willing to risk themselves and potentially leave their children behind for their greater ambition. That she knows how dangerous this path is that they walk.
そろそろ約束を果たしてもらおうかと。蘇りの薬のことか。
She wants to know.
形としては人質だが、拘束もないし、扱いはだいぶ緩い。
Because they know your position. They know you're Lacan's daughter.
この二人の行動には違和感しかない。でも、
You're
それより
noble.
も今気になるのは。わかった。
マンダラケとフグですか？割合は他に入れるものは量はどれぐらいが適量ですか？
She's like, I didn't expect her to be this intense.
意識はどの程度で戻りました？すぐ動けましたか？
マンだらけはいらないと思う。
いらない。
Oh, Mao, never change.
私はこの程度で済んだが、失敗すれば記憶を失う。人体で試すには、まだまだ改良の余地あり。
私でどうぞ。 名では試さない。
なんでですか、遠慮せずに。
Because you're Lacan's daughter.
仲良くなって
You're
よかった。
noble. You
お
can't
姉ちゃんもママも
risk her
友達
life.
少ないもんね。
うるさい。
黙って。
They're very alike.
はあ、これ全部薬草
ああ、私は出かける。外に見張りがいるから逃げようなどと思うなよ。
That was kind of nice of her. She didn't actually have to do that.
ほら、着替え。手伝ってあげるから。
うーわ、武将だな。すげえ偉そうだ。
She's hyperfixating.
シェンメイ。
Who's SHENMEI? Lady SHENMEI? Who's Lady SHENMEI?
いいかんざしだから存在に扱っちゃダメだよ。盗まれちゃうよ。
いい値段つくかな。
文様の細かさとか職人の技って感じ。
It's also
誰の
Jinshi's.
注文で作られたかわかると思うよ。
くれたやつが粘着質だから戻ってきそうだな。
I think she's gonna end up having it. I think Mao may end up giving it to her at some point. Oh no, she is too.
手慣れてるよね。
慣れてるよ。遅いとぶたれるもの。
ぶたれる。
What?
マッサージもうまくできないと熱いお湯かけられるの。
Please tell me you're joking.
違うよ。お母様なんだ、それ。
I'm sorry, what?
マオマオには怖い目にあってほしくないから、おとなしくしててね。
Your mother is fucking horrendous. Oh my goodness. So she would throw hot water at her and she would beat her if she didn't take care of her hair fast enough or massage her. So her mother is physically and emotionally abusive. And if she was that way to her own biological daughter, how the fuck was she towards Surei, who isn't her biological child? She likely was 10 times worse to Surei than she was to Lolan. And that's not to say that Lolan had it easy. Absolutely, she did not. That was horrendous. That's absolutely awful to treat your child that way, especially one of noble birth. You're treating her as if she's nothing more than a servant, nothing more than someone born to look after and tend to your needs. She's a pawn for her father's ambitions and her mother being lazy. Is that who SHENMEI is? Because he says she's lazy, like SHENMEI, Lady SHENMEI. So is that Lolan's mum? Potentially. Like, not doing anything for herself. But if she was this way with Lolan, she was likely this way with Surei, but I imagine 10 times worse because Surei's not her biological child and is likely the reminder of the fact that Shishu was married to someone else before her. This isn't confirmed that Shishu was married, but I'm presuming he was because Surei openly lives in this house as his daughter. That's not to say that he couldn't have claimed an illegitimate child, but I think he was married to the banished princess and they had Surei. I've said this theory numerous times, so I don't want anyone making any presumptions that I've had spoilers or anything by saying that he was previously married because we don't know. The show hasn't said. I'm just presuming that he was. But what a fucking horrible person her mother is. No wonder she's the way that she is, or that she feels like she can't be herself. Because her mother has physically beaten her. And I likely think that when she is herself, when she does get to indulge in what makes her happy, her mum probably beat her as well. Again, because it's not aligned with her idea of how Lowland should be.
私も今日は出かけるから。
Where are they going? They're both leaving. So are they going to meet with Shishu? They must be. Or their mother. Mother. I say it's not Surei's mother, but
6
Lowland's.
時間くらい経ったのかな。
Jesus Christ. She's been so invested in that book.
横にあるのは稲の貯蔵庫か。
あの人の田んぼ、育ちが悪いところがあんだよな。
あそこがその育ちの悪いところってことか。
Must be.
もしかして。
ネズミが入るからって床が高い新しい倉庫を作ったんで。
You know how they say the harvest isn't growing well around there and they've just built a new one with raised floors to keep the rats out? What if it's not like a storage for the harvest, but it's where they're hiding weapons? And that's why it's not performing well because they've occupied that land, not necessarily for the purpose of growing food, but for hiding their potential coup. The weapons that they're harnessing and the minerals that they're storing. Maybe. It's awfully sus. I think they're hiding weapons in that storehouse. Or minerals, or both, and the minerals are impacting the harvest growth.
仕方ねえな。教えてやるよ。俺が勉強から抜け出すために使ってる抜け道をな。
I love him. He's so mischievous. So what is his family connection? So they say that he came from a prosperous family. Maybe his mother is like Shishu's sister.
この窓の大きさと残ってる稲の幅、だいたい同じくらいだ。
It's not getting enough sunlight.
光を浴びていたんだ。
Or too much sunlight?
光が当たってると育たないのか？
普通は日当たりがいい方がよく育つと言われるけど、昼夜ずっと明るい光を浴びると育ちが狂うことがある。
Because there's something going on that's happening in the nighttime.
ここネズミが出るって言ってたよな。
Not rats. The only rats that are here is Shishu and the coup. They're the
水
rats.
霊は言っていた。薬を人体で試すにはまだまだ改良の余地ありだと。
I think she thinks she's gonna stumble across rats and she's not. He's picking the lock and everything.
ろくでもないガキだ。
中に何があるっていうのさ。
Weapons.
まあ予想はしてるけど。
No? I'm really disappointed. But they did said raised floor, so maybe underneath. I'm really disappointed.
全部持っていきたい。
No, it's just her little
それどころじゃ。
laboratory.
なんだこれ。
Maybe there is weapons here too.
ここまでは予想してなかった。
Fifers.
参ったな。これ
Schematics.
じゃまるで
There is weapons.
フェイファの工房じゃないか。
I was somewhat right. Actually, no, I was right. I was correct. She's gonna overhear something.
あら、なぜ鍵が開いていたのかし
This is Lolan's mum, isn't it?
やべえ、シェンメイ様だ。
It's gonna be Lolan's
ら。
mum.
私はね、
問題がありましたか？
気のせいでしたわ。
So is only one of them in on it, or are they both in on it?
汚いネズミが2匹入り込んでいたようだけ
You're the
ど。
rat. He's terrified of her.
この人がシェンメイ。
I love that she's protecting him. She's like holding him close, like, I'm not gonna let anything hurt you. She's dressing as if she's already a queen. Have you noticed that? The ornate headdress, the overdone makeup. She's dressing as if she's already an empress. She almost resembles the previous empress in appearance in terms of the fashion. She has ambitions of grandeur. 100%. So we see Isla. Where's Eileen? Because we saw Isla a couple of episodes back. So is Eileen in on it as well? Or is this Isla that's sort of going behind her cousin's back? But I was correct that there's something in this workshop that they didn't want anyone to find. And it's the Fifers. They're making Fifers. Not just for the assassination attempt, but they're going to be using this in their coup. Because the Emperor's forces will not have Fifers. Unless Lacan has started ensuring that they have Fifers. Because he drew up the schematics. Which makes me think that using his strategist mind, they're going to have Fifers. And they're not going to be ready for the fact that the Emperor's forces have Fifers. They think that they have one up on them. But Lacan's not stupid. He's not a fool. He knows that they don't have them. Doesn't mean that they now can't make them because they have the schematics. They know how to make them now. So they will make them. I love this whole analogy of rats. And then she's referring Mao Mao to being a rat, But the only rats here are these ones, are these that are working against the Emperor, that are in this coup. They are the rats that need to be exterminated, that need to be taken out, and they will be. But I think the lantern plan is going to be how Jinchi finds where Mao Mao is. I think Lolan and Surei, both of them very obviously have some element of respect and care for Mao Mao. Lolan wouldn't do all of this for Mao Mao if she didn't still value and care for her as a friend. And Surei, I think, admires and respects Mao Mao because, again, she didn't have to get her all those books. She didn't have to give her anything to occupy her time. Though she probably thought, if I can keep her occupied for hours, I don't have to worry about her getting into mischief or doing something that she shouldn't be. But it's Mao Mao. She opened the window, it had been 6 hours, and within the space of a couple of minutes have found something that puts a spanner in their works because she now knows about their plan. But they can't harm her because she's the Khan's daughter. And they know that because Mao Mao keeps going, like, I don't understand why they're treating me so well. Because you are Lacan's daughter. You are the daughter to the La household. They can't harm you. You're their insurance policy to make sure that Lacan doesn't wipe their family off the map. But the fact that we learnt more about this village, that they're all connected to the people that came from the West, that the majority of the people here, because of the bloodline being so connected, have colorblindness, that Shisui has colorblindness, which is rare in women, which is why it didn't click in my head. Even though it said the majority of the men were using it, I'm really angry at myself that it took the show telling me that she was colorblind for me to clock it. I should have clocked it a lot sooner, but this is getting incredibly exciting, especially now that we've been introduced to Lolan's mother and we're going to learn even more. And I did say they were going to start humanizing Lolan. And now that we know that she's beaten by her mother, that she's abused by her mother, I want to know more about the family dynamic because clearly it's a very tense one. It's one where Lolan doesn't feel that she has a voice or a say, that she has to do what her mother wants of her and expects of her. That this guise that she puts on in the rear palace is the one that her family expect of her, but the Shisui that we see, the one that is kind and affectionate and compassionate and caring, is who she really is, but is never allowed to be. And it all ties back again to this mushroom that was growing in episode 3 on the corpse mushroom, where Mama was saying, what kind of plant grows in this environment? If a fungus could grow from a corpse, how would it function? What would it be like? How would it turn out? And that's not related to plants. It's related to people. How does a person's environment shape who they become, shape who they are, shape their experiences? And we're going to see that with Lolan, and we're going to see that with Surei. We're going to see 2 children who have been raised in a horribly toxic environment who have become a product of that. But that shouldn't define who they are. And I'm hoping that they both get somewhat of a happy ending, that they can live a relative life of peace away from all of this. I'm really hoping that's the case because I don't feel like it's fair to punish them. I know they're involved in it and I know it's treason, but you almost have to question how much of it is actually a choice and how much is coercion. And I feel like the majority of it is coercion, that they feel like they don't have a choice because of their parents, because of the fear that they've instilled in them. I want to know more about the young boy. So he's not their brother. I thought initially he was, but he's not. He's scared of SHENMEI. He doesn't refer to her as mother, so that's not his mom. So Lolan is honorifically called Big Sis, but they are close and he lives in that building. So he was of a noble family. So I'm wondering if he's still connected to her family, as in like maybe they're cousins. I don't know, but we'll maybe learn a little bit more. But it all comes full circle, doesn't it? Like the most subtle things in this show all have a meaning, which is why I think the lantern plant is going to be how Jinshi discovers where they're being held, because the plant is native to this region and that's how he's going to narrow it down. And the moment they said that people from the West came and assimilated into this village, I was like, oh my god, it's connected to the Mother Royal, and that's why there's colorblindness. That's why Shishu is colorblind, because they descend from those same people. They have those connections. But then the question is that you have to wonder, is Shishu may not actually descend from the Mother Royal herself, because the people from the West came here and they assimilated. We know that colorblindness is more prolific with people from the West. So it could just be that he is from one of these Western bloodlines, not specifically the Mother Royals, but another bloodline that also carried that genetic predisposition, especially because of how closely linked all these bloodlines are in this small population, because of the fact that there's so many that share that genetic trait. Because Mama said there's a lot wearing green and mostly men, and Shisui also has that genetic predisposition. So I think it could be not necessarily that he descends from the Mother Royal, but he descends from the people that came from the West that assimilated and settled down in this region. But because he carries that trait, likely thinks that he does descend from the Mother Royal, but he doesn't actually. He just descends from one of these people that came from the West. It could be that he descends from the Mother Royal, but I think what this is trying to emphasize and show is that this genetic trait that is linked to royalty isn't only linked to the Mother Royal. It's linked to anyone that came from the West in this traveling caravan, and that potentially pinning this idea of royalty and legitimacy and legacy onto this genetic trait is problematic, because it's not solely the Mother Royal's blood that carries it. There's other families from the West that would carry it too. So this could be where the problems are arising, is that when you put so much stock into a genetic trait that isn't solely originating from one person, but from multiple, you end up with those believing that they have a claim to the throne, even though they don't come from that bloodline specifically. But they believe that they do because they share the same trait as royalty and nobility. So they think they descend from it, but they may not descend from it. It could just be because the Westerners settled, they assimilated, and they settled here, but it's a very isolated village. Meaning, it's very unlikely that the Mother Royal came from this village, because the empire would be set up here, but it's not. She moved further in, but some of her people stayed here. So I think what it's trying to show is that when you put so much stock into this one thing, it could cause potential issues down the line, because there could be those from non-royal bloodlines who have this distinguishing royal feature that then convince themselves that they have legitimacy to rule because of it. But I am so excited for the next episode. I really cannot wait to learn more. I am absolutely devastated for Lowland that her mother is abusive, but again, I think it ties back to this story that she told about this praying mantis, this woman that devours her husband. And I think it could be in reference to her mother, that her mother is a figure that devours those around her, including her own family, for her own desires and her own aims. Because obviously she is helping because she knows about this workshop, and she's visiting, and she's also meeting with Isla. I think that's all I want to say for now. I'm really excited to see episode 20. It's all ramping up from here, and I just want to binge watch it, but I can't because I have so much more that I have to film. But yeah, until next episode, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this react, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below to help boost this video into the algorithm. Until next episode, bye!